Online Zen. Tonight's Dharma talk is given by Robert Koho Epstein.
We are all on the path, whether we like it or not, of what we call reality, which takes place one moment at a time in what we call the real world. Each moment is sudden, and in reality is 100% lacking in predictability. We can predict with some certainty that many things are probably going to happen, and perhaps going to happen within a given time frame. I don't want to jinx it, but I've never woken up in the morning and find that the floor has fallen apart and that I have nothing left to stand on in the house. The walls have come down or the ceiling has come down. The roof has broken a couple of times, but that's also predictable. So we can predict with some certainty that many things are probably going to happen, perhaps going to happen within a given time frame. And I'll say a little bit about that before I get back to the unpredictability. We have new algorithms for probability calculation, which are a little bit scary and can be amazingly precise, particularly in medicine these days. Though that can be frightening for those who may not want to know the future or the probable future. Just as genetic typing can predict whether you have certain genes that will rule in or out to a great extent various illnesses. So that's not to say that there's no role for prediction or the factor of predictability in this reality, as surprising as this reality sometimes is. And it's kind of an interesting combination between predictability of the long arc and unpredictability of the moment. And, in the really long arc, we can all predict where we're all heading, as Venerable Unsan alluded to at the beginning of the talk. So just to give an example, my twin tabbies, my beloved cats, I have a new cat who I also love, but I had my twin tabbies for 16 or 17 years, respectively. And they passed away a few years ago. And the vet was able to run an algorithm that predicted the development of their fatal kidney disease almost to the month, based on the progression of numbers in their blood tests. That's pretty crazy. I guess all living beings have a kind of design in which certain factors can allow for predictions as far as our psychophysical being goes, our psychophysical existence. Sometimes they don't come out that way, but increasingly we can kind of see where things are going by the way they seem to be going. If kidney factors are moving in a certain direction, you can see where the kidneys are going to wind up. And it also reminds me, although it's not really a good comparison, of what's supposed to be an ancient Chinese saying. I'm not really sure if it is or not, but I was told that this was an ancient Chinese saying that if you don't change your direction, you're liable to wind up where you were headed. And we can think about that for a little while, depending on where we want to wind up. So in a way, we can tell where our lives are going by following the numbers. And I don't know if they do this for people with these algorithms, but I think they can. And I wonder how we would live our lives if we knew exactly how long it was going to be before this or that developed in this or that way. Probabilities work with some degree of predictability for the long arc of things. But on the other hand, they cannot predict the very next moment, also known as the now moment or the very soon to come moment that's coming right next, like the not very soon to come but highly anticipated coming Buddha, which also can't be predicted with any certainty. Surprising things continue to happen all the time. So kind of like karma itself, we have a very unpredictable present, but we know that over the long arc of karma or dependently arisen conditions, we will most likely get the results of many of the significant things we have done or failed to do. We're not personally responsible, as far as we know, for the genetics of our kidneys, although there could be an element of karma in there too. But there are lots of other things we can potentially mindfully interact with and make a difference, at least over the long arc. And if we have practice and we attempt to be mindful or aware, pay attention, as we say, the choices that we make about how to direct our lives and how to interact with the lives of others may be influenced in what you could think of as a positive way. Anyway, these unpredictable things happen and we interact with them the way we do. So in a way, the path that we're on is a gradual path with surprising moments. And it's enhanced by our practice, even though our practice does not allow us to predict the next moment any better than if we didn't have any practice. It would be nice, as we are dealing with each next unpredictable moment, if we had a way of engaging with the moment that is an awakening way of being with it. And that seems a little redundant to Zen in a way, but it's also still an open question how to be prepared for the moment in a sense by being awake, and how to deal with the moment when it comes in an awake sort of a way. Our great founder, the teacher who came to the West from India and started Zen in China, Bodhidharma, suggested a most direct way of working with the moment and bringing it to fruition in awakening. And that is what I would like to call, not necessarily exactly what he called it, although not too different from it either, out of a number of different terms that are similar, embracing the moment. What you could say is embracing what is, the unpredictable events of the coming moment and the next moment and the moment after that. As it turns out, delusion, I would say, delusion and the dukkha, the suffering that comes out of a deluded point of view, and which you could say in a way is the antithesis of the Buddhist agenda, is based and rooted in the foundation of non-acceptance. And one could say that completely embracing the moment as it is, and in the exact way it occurs, may be a major symptom or part of the definition of enlightenment. The reason it's so important and so emblematic of understanding our true nature as aware beings is that the foundation of the human problem, the dukkha, that is translated as discontent, unhappiness, suffering, is rooted in the delusion of all delusions that things could possibly be different from the way they are. Some people say that if you accept things the way they are, that you're falling into passivity and adopting a kind of fatalism that you can't really do anything about a problem or change the course of events. And I feel like that's a real misunderstanding, or in some cases, a misapplication of the principle of acceptance, if in fact, the way that you embrace the moment is by collapsing and falling into passivity. That's why I like to think of it as very dynamic, not passive at all, active embracing or welcoming of the moment as it is. In other words, rather than putting up with what occurs in the moment, we are actively welcoming it and saying yes to it. Let's say I'm in an art class and the teacher says, guess what we're working? We're working with clay today. And my response to that is that I hate clay and I don't want to work with it. Scenario A, I don't participate and I don't make any kinds of sculpture, so I'm basically missing the class. Scenario B, I half-heartedly screw around with the clay and make a sculpture that's not satisfying to me or anyone else because I'm resisting it the whole time I'm working with it. C, I adapt to the situation and say, hey, I've got clay, yay. Since I don't like working with clay, but since I've got clay, I'm going to work with it wholeheartedly and turn it into something beautiful. The first two scenarios of non-acceptance get you nothing but more suffering. They are suffering forms of non-acceptance. In the third scenario, it might look like I'm giving in to circumstance, surrendering my will by accepting the clay and working with it. But in fact, that is the only scenario in which I'm engaging with reality and taking control of the situation by submitting to it. So in scenario 3, I'm taking control by giving up control. First, I embrace the circumstances, and then by being able to engage fully with what is, I'm able to maintain a skillful relationship to what is and mold the circumstances to a beneficial result. So Bodhidharma suggests that this is the way to work with adverse circumstances, embrace them. And then, of course, by embracing them, we can skillfully work with them. It may seem a little silly, but I find it useful to state what it is I'm dealing with in a clear and concise way. We can also do this. We do this in acting training when we're learning to work with imaginary circumstances. What is the actual situation? What is the concrete situation that I'm dealing with? In an acting scenario, it's an imaginary situation. You're given something imaginary and you're engaging with it and trying to see what it is. How can I state it clearly? What is my current situation? So you can say mentally to yourself, hey, I've got a computer problem right now. Yay, my computer's not working. Yay, and embrace it. Then from embracing it, you can understand and deal with it. Yay. So my contention going along with, Bodhidharma's advice, and also if you were to go against the Buddha's advice about the second arrow in the parable of the two arrows, we are shot with the first arrow of circumstances. We have a physical condition that is painful. We have a situation. I recently was kicked out of my auto insurance. I'm not happy about that. But we are given different circumstances that can be difficult or uncomfortable. But the second arrow is what we inflict upon ourselves in response to that circumstance. So I freaked out a little bit about not having auto insurance. I mean, they had some really silly reason for canceling my auto insurance. And there was a period of time when I wasn't sure what auto insurance I would get to replace it or how I would do it or whatnot. During that period of time of upset, I was creating dukkha for myself. I was myself through my heart mind. I was generating discomfort, distress, and suffering. It's true that it's a real situation. Chances are that I was going to deal with it. But you could say that with the right kind of training, which I obviously don't have to the full extent that I would like to, you could look at that situation and say, you know what? I don't have to proliferate the thoughts and emotions about this situation that make it worse. And the Buddha in the Satipatthana Sutta suggested how you could look at mental states and emotional states as they arise and fall away and see that they are taking place with a kind of their own propulsion and their own pattern, and that everything that arises is going to fall away. And instead of bouncing off of it and creating a whole bunch of more proliferate dukkha, we can watch it rise and fall away and let it go. And of course, the situation did resolve itself, and I wound up with auto insurance. So it's the second arrow. The second arrow is pretty much always how we respond to conditions that we didn't expect or don't like or didn't anticipate or were different from our expectations or disappointing to us. Not to mention the dukkha that we generate by going back to past events and trying to change them after they're already over, which is literally impossible. So if I don't say, okay, I lost my car insurance, what do I do next? And just embrace it, then I have to deal with resisting it or feeling unhappy about it and going through a whole related scenario that is not in reality, but in my mind. So this way of working with things through embracing, in it, we meet our own mental and emotional condition, our own human condition, where and how it is, and we work with that also. It's not just working with outer circumstances, but accepting and embracing what occurs in our own mind and emotions and working with that. We can learn to refrain from creating delusions by refraining from reactions of why, if only, and other rejections of reality, which when we rub against reality with friction, it causes dukkha, it causes suffering. Why did this happen to me? And if only it were different. Take energy and time and emotional and mental distress away from the creative energy that we can use to fully embrace and work with what exists. And I think we create a lot of suffering for ourselves throughout our entire lifetime on top of the basic dukkha that we can't avoid. With Zen practice, seeing what comes up and working with the sufferings in our mind, we can embrace and work with whatever is there. And like the clay in the art class, which we embraced and worked with, even though it was not what we really wanted to work with, we can turn it into something worthwhile. In fact, the moment when it is embraced in a certain way always turns into something worthwhile. And every time that the moment as it exists is resisted, pushed away, try to revise it and make believe it didn't happen, or spend time, wishing that it hadn't been the way it is, we turn it into something that's not so great and we create more suffering. The important thing about this process of embracing is that it also allows us to see the essence of the present moment beyond our own thoughts and reactions to it. When we are resisting and fighting with the moment or wishing it was different, we really can't see what it is or really have contact with it. Instead, we're in contact with the overlay of our own thoughts and feelings that we've generated in reaction to it. And that means that we are in a deluded state. We're not in touch with reality because we're not willing to embrace what's there. I realize that God is kind of a funny metaphor in Buddhism, but there's a nice sentence from a poem of Rainer Maria Rilke's where he says, there is a wall between you and me, God, and that wall is constructed of my images of you. And what separates us from the reality of the moment and the tathata, the actuality, the presence essence of the moment, is our images, our thoughts, beliefs, reactions, and resistances to being in touch with and embracing what actually exists. The moment, exactly as it is, exists in its own luminosity. And when we embrace the moment as it is, we can awaken right now to that sense of clarity and luminosity, which is always there. As the Buddha said, the nature of the mind is radiant, but it becomes covered over with many defilements, and that the wise person knows that they can remove those defilements and experience that radiance. So why not awaken now? Each moment a new opportunity, rather than wait or wish or revise or try to make it different than it is and create more dukkha. Thanks.